A function is a block of reusable code to perform a specific task. This is the syntax of a function. Def keyword is used to define a function. Function name is the name of your function. The name should follow the same naming conventions that we saw for variables. Use lowercase letters and underscores to separate words. Choose meaningful and descriptive names that indicate the purpose of the function. Arguments are the variables that you can pass to a function as inputs. A function may or may not return a value after executing the code. If there is no return value or if there is no return statement, the function returns none by default. Let's look at a simple function. I am using def keyword followed by the function name message, and it accepts one argument called MSG. Inside this function, we are simply calling print function to print the message. This is the definition of the function message. To call a function, this is the syntax. Function name followed by parenthesis where we mention the list of arguments. I am calling message function with the parameter hello. Let's run this program and see what is the output. The message hello is printed in the console. When a function is called, the control goes to the definition. It executes the code inside the function and returns a value. This function doesn't return any value. As I mentioned earlier, if there is no return statement, it returns none by default. Let me assign this function output to a variable output, and I'll print this variable. Since we call the message function, this function is executed and returns a value none since there is no return statement here. So we see none here. Let's see another example. We have multiple functions here. You can perform a simple operation like we did in add and subtract functions. We can use conditional statement inside a function. For example, in divide function, if the denominator is 0, program throws divide by 0 error. So, in order to avoid that error, we have a condition here to see if number 2, which is denominator, is 0 or not. If it's not 0, we simply perform division operation and return the value. Otherwise, we return infinity, which can be done using float INF. You can perform complex operations inside a function, and you can call another function also inside a function. For example, I have a function called calculate, which accepts two numbers and the operation to be performed. Initially, the result would be 0. Based on the operation, we call the respective functions. If the operation is plus, we are calling add function. If it's minus, subtract, star, multiply, slash, divide. We are storing the return value in the variable result. Finally, calculate method would return the value stored in result. Now I am calling these functions with different operations, and for divide I have two cases here. One where the number 2 is not equal to 0 and the other where number 2 is equal to 0. Let's see what would be the output of these functions. So the output is 1 plus 2 is 3, 1 minus 2 is minus 1, 1 multiplied by 2 is 2, 1 divided by 2 is 0.5, 1 divided by 0 is infinity because of this else case. We can call a function by specifying the argument name. These are called named arguments. For example, I have a function called add which accepts two parameters num1 and num2. I am printing these values. Finally, I am returning the sum of these two numbers. When I am calling this function, instead of directly passing the numbers, I can pass the numbers using argument names When we use argument names, the order of arguments doesn't matter because we know the names here. So usually when I say add 10 comma 20, 10 will be assigned to number 1, 20 will be assigned to number 2. When it comes to named parameters, I can pass them in any order because I am using the names of the parameters so that the order doesn't matter. I am assigning value 10 to num2 and 20 to num1. Let's see the output. So the number 1 is assigned to value 20, number 2 is assigned to value 10. Finally, the sum of these two numbers is 30. We can use loops inside a function. I have a function sum which accepts a parameter number. Using for loop, I am calculating the sum of numbers. I am using range function here which accepts num as the parameter and it loops until this number. So when I pass sum of 10, since I starts with 0 when we use range function, it calculates the sum of numbers from 0 to 9, which would return us a total of 45. Let's run this program and see the output. So the answer is 45. Remember that any code after the return statement will not be executed. For example, I have a print statement after the return statement here, which says calculated the sum of whatever number that we passed numbers. Let me run this code. So we see the output and this print statement is not executed because it is written after the return statement.